a warm welcome again to everybody. Today, we will be talking about Adobe Edge Delivery Services and what IT needs to know. So this will be a rather technical webinar, but we also have some things ready that's super interesting for marketeers. Before we get started, let me introduce myself. My name is Jacob and my nickname is Cubby, so you might hear that in the next hour. I'm your host today, but I'm also a project lead and a business analyst. And I brought along Linus and Cornelius. So Linus, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, welcome everyone. I'm Linus. I'm a front-end tech lead here at VASS Switzerland, working in several web projects with different CMS, and also did a lot of investigation on how to build good solutions with Adobe Edge Delivery Services.
Hi, I'm Cornelius. I'm a senior technical consultant at VASS with more or less 20 years of experience in turning complex tech into competitive advantages. Today, I'm here to show you how Adobe EDS removes the friction in your content supply chain, allowing IT to govern effectively while marketing moves at the speed of culture.
Thank you, guys. You can see that our webinar is part of a series, part of the DXP Unlocked webinar series. DXP stands for Digital Experience Platforms, which is more or less a synonym for content management systems, but today we will talk about DXP. Two events have already passed. You can still catch them on YouTube. We'll be posting a link later on. Today, we have the technical side of EDS, and we will host another event in December about beyond publishing. We'll be talking about personalization and A/B testing. So make sure to register for that as well. Now, about today, we will introduce Adobe Edge Delivery Services, obviously. And we want to try to understand the core principles. We have an implementation deep dive ready for you. With also a short demo, of course. We implemented a lot of projects already, so we have a lot of practical things to know ready for you. And of course, we want to position EDS in your architecture. Now, before we dive into EDS, I want to introduce VASS real quick. We are a globally operating company with almost 5,000 employees. And we're mainly based in Europe. Our headquarters is in Spain. The three of us here are in Switzerland. And VASS has a lot of lines of businesses, such as SAP or Salesforce. And for us, the most important one, of course, digital experience area. In the digital experience area, we are a bit more than 1,000 people. Linus, you can go to the next slide. And here in Switzerland, we are the core Adobe competence center. But globally, we also work on Liferay or Magnolia, WordPress, Drupal, and so on. And because we work with all of these content management systems or digital experience platforms, as we learned already, we can see that EDS is really entering the market as a game changer. And I know it's still quite new, but we are very sure that's here to stay. And let me introduce or explain you why. With EDS projects, we see that compared to traditional AM sites projects, you can save up to 30% in your efforts and therefore also in your time to market. But EDS is not only interesting because of time savings. It also brings the content creation process closer to the content management process. And for that, there are different authoring possibilities, and content authoring in general, I would say, is much more intuitive. Also, the performance is super interesting with EDS because an EDS website or a website built on EDS is almost guaranteed a perfect Google Lighthouse score. So you'll have core web vitals that are really going through the roof. And this is not only important for SEO, we know that today, but also for GEO, generative engine optimization. And Today, it's important to be cited within LLMs, and for that, performance matters too. So without further ado, let's get started with EDS, and over to you, Linus.
Great, thank you very much, Kirby. I would like then start with a quick technical introduction about Adobe Edge Delivery Services, in short, EDS. So we will talk about the core principles of Adobe Edge Delivery Services. EDS is integrated into the Adobe Experience Manager. So if you have an Adobe Experience Manager Cloud license as a cloud service license, you can also use Adobe EDS. And if you don't have it, the good thing is you can still try it out by yourself with the document-based approach we are going to show you later. You shouldn't really publish a page and you can't have access to all features, but you can try it out yourself. So it's integrated into AEM, and we identified like 3 core principles, and we are going into these 3 principles now more in depth. One is EDS is high performance by design because there is built-in optimization performance checks. The other one is that it's decoupling content from the authoring source and the delivery. And the last one is that it really makes development faster. Okay, let's start with the first point, that is high performance by design. Kirby already mentioned why high performance is important today. So it's very important for search engine optimization and large language models. And if you're building a solution with Edge Delivery Services, you have all the SEO fundamentals in it. So everything you would expect, but also you can publish content really fast. You will see this later. You can publish content really fast, and this is also good for search engine optimization because you have a quick publication cycle. Then on top of that, of course, you have great performance. There is built-in optimization. You have automated lighthouse checks that check the core web vitals. So they give you a score, and if your newest feature fails, you will directly see it, and you can do an improvement directly. So this check is included, and there is a mechanism where you can load, let's say, heavy third-party scripts later when you have your page already fully interactive, so that your core web vitals score is not disturbed by this. So these are just some points why the performance is great. Then on top of that, you have, of course, optimization possibilities. So there is a possibility to have native A/B testing, so you can compare pages analytics, Matomo, and so on. Yeah, please.
Linus, sorry, your sound just dropped off, but you're back. All good.
Okay.
Please continue.
Okay. Interesting. So, but you heard everything so far. Okay. Great. Don't know why this happened. Let me go on to the next slide. So the next core principle is decoupling content. And here, the nice feature of Adobe Edge Delivery Services is that you can choose between a lot of different authoring options when using EDS. So you can have AEM-based authoring with the universal editor, which is what you see is what you get editor, where you can drag and drop the components around and just preview them on a page like on the actual page. You can have document-based authoring, and you can have the Adobe Experience Manager content fragments. Then you can also do document-based authoring with EDS, which is a pretty unique feature. So you can put your content into Word documents or Google Drive documents, and on Google Drive, Google Docs on Google Drive, and you can directly generate a website out of these documents. So you can edit the content in these documents and have it running through Edge Delivery Services and have a website out of this. And you can also have your own content sources.
I have a question here, Linus. If I'm a company that really has to deliver new pages super fast, the speed is what matters. What would you recommend in choosing?
Yeah, if you want to publish stuff really fast, typically you would go for a document-based authoring approach, because this is the tool the authors will already know. and there is no intermediate step in between, and you can maybe even skip this additional migration step from your content from the Word document and putting it in another CMS or editor.
And when I have a rather complex site, complex components, what would you recommend there?
So if your site is rather complex and you want to have a little bit more, let's say, guidance for the authors, say what kind of subcomponents they can add in certain places, and also access maybe assets from your DEM that you have already, I would rather go for the universal editor or content fragments, so an AM-based solution. Because with these solutions, yeah, as mentioned, you can restrict what the authors can add in the content, and you can guide the authors better. These are the advantages you will have, and you have the automatically integrated AM backend with the DEM and all these things.
Thank you.
Right. Now that we spoke about the different authoring sources, let's take a closer look at the bigger picture here in this diagram from Adobe. How EDS works in general. So as mentioned before, you have the different content providers here in the row on the bottom. So the content can come from the Word documents, for example, and the code from GitHub and all the other things. And this will provide you with content, structured and unstructured, assets and media, and the code. And then it will go through the admin API from Edge Delivery Services and create a preview and a view of your content via Edge Delivery Services. So this is this layer, and then there is a CDN between it. And in the end, you can view the content as a user or a visitor with the browser or with apps. So this is for the bigger picture. Now we are already coming to the last core principle, which is faster development. Here on this screen, you will see a workflow that is probably similar to any other web projects, but with EDS, it should be much faster, a lot of the steps, and you will hopefully notice it at the end of this webinar why it's faster. I will now zoom into the development part and explain what is the development, the core principle of the development for Edge Delivery Services. So at the core of Edge Delivery Services, you always have blocks, which are like components, and they are made with vanilla JavaScript and CSS. So your authors will work with blocks, and yeah, that's the core principle. So each block has a definition. That's the first step. So this describes how the component or the block will look like, what kind of fields, what the authors can add in this block. It will be in a JSON for the universal editor or in a table, typically if you have document-based approach. And then it will generate a basic HTML out of this block. And in the second step, the developers would extend this basic HTML for logic with JavaScript to add logic, or with CSS to add styles. So that's the main core principle of EDS.
I have another question here. If I want to work with a framework or external libraries such as React or Solid.js, Angular, Tailwind CSS, can I still do that with EDS?
Yes, you can definitely do it. So you can integrate web components first. You can use web components or integrate frameworks like Solid.js, for example. And also in some of our projects, we included Tailwind CSS, which work pretty well for faster styling and also unified styling. But the general recommendation is to keep it simple. With the default setup, you have no extra build or pre-processing step, which is a big advantage. And when you integrate your things, yeah, maybe you need additional steps.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks. Now I would like to hand over to Cornelius for the implementation deep dive.
Yes, thank you so much, Linus. The next topic on the agenda is the implementation deep dive. You will pretty much learn how to set up an EDS project, what is the fast dev loop, and how to migrate existing content from a legacy website to your new EDS website. All right, let's talk about the initial getting started setup for the EDS project. The most important thing to know is that this entire process takes roughly 5 minutes and relies on modern familiar tools like GitHub and NPM. So you're not installing a 50 gigabyte local server like you would do maybe on an IAM instance or IAM project. So step one is to create a new GitHub repository. You don't start from a blank slate. You use one of Adobe's official boilerplates. And this is like, here's your first key decision. Number one would be to choose a document-based approach. So that means writing content in Google Docs or SharePoint. Or you choose to use the IAM and Universal Editor. And like Linus already told you, what you see is what you get editing experience inside IAM. Next, you connect the IAM CodeSync GitHub app to your new repository. This app is the CI/CD pipeline for your code. It's the magic, so to say, that connects your code to the live Edge delivery environment. So that means when you push a change to one of your branches, like you change CSS or blocks in JavaScript, this app is what tells EDS to purge its cache and serve the new version. Next, step 3 is setting up your local machine. It's a single command npm install, as shown here on the slide. And the IAM command line interface is your primary local development tool. It's what lets you simulate the entire EDS environment on your personal laptop. And last but not least, you can start coding. Once the CLI is installed, you just cd into your project's directory and run the command IAM up. This command is incredibly powerful. More on that in a second. And that's it. You're ready. So in just a few minutes, you have completed the dev environment that mirrors production, connects to live content, and has a built-in CI/CD pipeline. This speed and simplicity are central to the entire EDS philosophy. So when you create your repository from that, so one of the boilerplates, what do you actually get? It's not an empty project. It's a complete batteries included toolkit provided by Adobe. The screenshot shows the standard structure. The most important folder is, for the developers at least, is the blocks folder here. EDS is a component-based system, and blocks are your content components. The boilerplate gives you several examples right out of the box, like a hero, a cards, and a text block. For your IT team, this is your reference library. You can immediately see how they are structured, how the CSS is applied, and how the JavaScript, if any, is loaded. So that means you're not starting from zero. You start by modifying these examples provided by Adobe. Next is the content repository. Now, the boilerplate doesn't just give you the code. It also gives you a link to an example content repository, a real Google Drive folder in this case, that you can look at. You can clone it and then just start working from there. This example repository contains the matching content, like an index document and other pages that are already using the example blocks provided in the code. Now, one question: how does the code knows where to find the content? And the answer is a configuration file, namely fs-tab. You cannot see it in the screenshot, but this file is basically the glue. It contains a simple mapping that tells EDS the root of my website is powered by this specific content URL. And this could be SharePoint, this could be Google Docs, it could be DA Live, or even IAM. So from the very first minute, you have a complete end-to-end working example. You have the code, you have the content, and you have the configuration that connects them. So your first task is to simply modify these examples, not to build an entire system from scratch.
I have a question here. And by the way, whenever you guys from the audience have a question, please type them into the chat. My question to you, Cornelius, is you mentioned this is all coming with GitHub, but if I'm working with GitLab or Bitbucket or any other Git repository, can I still work with EDS?
Yeah, so because GitHub is actually quite popular, Adobe obviously decided to go first with GitHub, but there is now also the possibility to integrate with GitLab, with Bitbucket, and your self-hosted Git repository if you want that. The setup process is a bit more complex than what I've showed you, but in general it works. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Right. In the getting started steps, we installed the IAM command line interface and ran IAM up. Now, I want to unpack what's included in that command line interface because it's really the Swiss Army knife for EDS development. My screenshot here shows the CLI in action, but its real power is what it's doing in the background, which boils down to basically 3 key functions. First, it runs a local development server. This is what's serving your project on localhost, so on your machine. But it's not a simple static file server. It is actually simulating the entire Edge delivery rendering process. That means it's taking your local code, your blocks, your CSS, your JavaScript, and it's using it to build the pages. This is your core. This is the core of your VASS development loop. When you save a file in your IDE, that means the server instantly live reloads the page with your new content. Second, and this is the most powerful part, it acts as a reverse proxy to your live content source. This is a key concept. Your local server does not have a local copy of the content. When your browser requests a page, your IAM app server sees it, doesn't have the content. It proxies that request, goes out to the real Google Drive or SharePoint, pulls down the live content, and then merges it on the fly with your local code. That means you're always developing against the most current real-world content created by your authors. You never have to sync a local database or use a stale lorem ipsum text. You can test your new blog against a page an author just published seconds ago. And finally, the IAM CLI bundle also includes or works directly with the content import tools we are about to discuss in a minute. So the IAM CLI is far more than just a run command. It's your local render time environment, your live content proxy, and your migration utility, all rolled into one simple NPM package. Okay, so we've seen the setup, the CLI, and the boilerplate. And now I'm going to show you what the day-to-day developer workflow actually looks like. This is the fast dev loop, I call it, that is the core of EDS development. We're going to perform a simple change request that I just received from my client. So first of all, we're going to switch to the browser to see the page as it is right now on the production environment. You can see we are on some specific Adobe EDS URL, and we have the page here with a header, a hero, some content, an accordion, and so forth. And this content is coming from Google Docs. So the CR we are looking at right now is to change these hard corners to round corners, which is a very popular feature, obviously. And for that, we are going to quickly go into the development environment, and we run IAM up really quick to show you what's happening. So you can see it booted up rather quickly, and it jumped back to the browser. And now we see the same page, but this time it's coming from my local machine. It's exactly the same version that you saw here on the first tab, but this time it's using the code that I have on my local machine. So now we can go back and create a new branch because that's what we want to do. So we can git checkout. We call it feed new webinar. So now we are on the new branch, development branch for this specific feature. And what we're going to do is we add a new CSS rule here, border radius. And we are using the default border radius that the website has. We just hit save on the file and go back to the browser. And you can see without further ado, the article list, the images have now round borders, round corners, as compared to the live version that still is using the old, let's say the old version that we had before. So now the next step would be to finish up this task. Let's do that really quick. Feed article list, add a fancy round corners, and commit it. Now that we created the commit and we pushed the code to the central GitHub repository, we can also now share this change to our QA team or to the client to preview it, to have a look before we merge it back into the main production website. So how does that work with EDS? It's actually quite simple. We can just go to the URL I showed you before and change the part here from main to feed webinar. And you can see the website is still here, but this time it's using the shared change that we just created. So now we can see this site has round corners. It's a totally valid URL. I can just copy paste and send to my QA team to verify the change, and send to the client to verify the change. And then when we're done and everyone is happy with that change, we can go back to the development and merge back the change into the main branch. And by this, finishing this change request and making it available on the production instance. So just in a few minutes, we created a branch, made code changes, saw it live in both the local as well as the feature branch environment that, by the way, perfectly mimic the production environment. And this speed is what makes EDS development so powerful. Before we go any further, I want to quickly reintroduce the live project that all these concepts are based on, the GVB host site website, which you can visit right now at hostsite.gvb.ch. Having a real in-production site is important because it proves that these aren't just Hello World demos that we're presenting you. As a quick recap, this site runs on EDS, Universal Editor. This was a key decision because the project has a separate team of dedicated editors who need a more visual, what you see is what you get authoring experience, and which the Universal Editor provides. We classified it as a small website. It's not a 1,000-page corporate portal, it's a focused digital magazine. This makes a perfect candidate for EDS, where we can prioritize speed and agility. A key takeaway for IT is the exclusive custom branded design. This is not a standard template. It proves that using EDS doesn't mean sacrificing brand identity. The dev team was able to implement a fully bespoke design on top of the EDS framework. And finally, the result. Because it's built on Edge Delivery Services, the site achieves extremely high performance. It scores exceptionally well on Core Web Vitals, as you can see on this screenshot. So here we can you can see we get 89 out of 100, which is not that bad, I would say. So all of that, like the project itself, made the client actually quite happy. And they started to explore options to migrate existing websites from their legacy system to the Edge Delivery Services. So here we come to a critical step, which is content migration. You might have thousands of existing blog articles in your legacy system. The challenge is obviously that your new Edge Delivery Service environment requires every single one of those posts to be a separate structured Word or Google document. And this creates a massive bottleneck. I guess you can't ask, don't have a team sitting around waiting for you to come around to ask them to manually copy and paste 1,000 pages, right? So the solution is to automate it using Adobe IAM. importer. This tool completely shifts the effort. Instead of a massive manual data entry project, it becomes a one-time technical configuration. You configure the importer to crawl your live site. You use JavaScript again, rules to select the right DOM nodes, like the title, the images, tags that you have, and so forth, and so on and so forth. And it automatically generates all the documents for you. So basically, you don't migrate 1,000 pages. You write one script that migrates them for you. Yeah.
I have a question here, and by the way, we are already receiving questions in the chat. We will answer them at the end. For EDS, you mentioned that we usually work with SharePoint, Google Drive, but maybe I'm as a company don't have access to these tools. Can I still work document-based with EDS?
Yeah, document-based. So I already mentioned it. Adobe has a tool that tries to bridges the gap between Adobe Experience Manager and SharePoint. That's called DA Live. It's a content repository hosted by Adobe with a full integration of EDS. You can have all the benefits that EDS brings. And yeah, so my short answer would be yes, you can absolutely do that.
Great. Thank you.
Good. So that was the implementation deep dive. Now handing back over to you, Linus.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I now would like to share some practical things, how we implemented certain things on this website. That's what that was mentioned, this GVB website for GVB. So to give you some insights, how maybe also some new insights how you can implement certain things. So let me start. You will often have the requirement that you reuse content across the page in different components, let's say. So let's say, for example, you have a blog detail page with an image, a title, some text. You might want to use this content of this detail page also like here in a filter view or in the search. And for this kind of thing, to reuse the content, there are a lot of possibilities how to solve this within EDS. And one feature is the query index, which we think is pretty important and also acts to a certain degree as a backend replacement. So when you have this use case, let's say, and you have this content here, you can specify in a Helix query YAML file, you can say every time when a page is published to extract certain content out of this page and store it in a query index JSON file. So on publication, the data of this page is extracted and stored in this JSON file, and then other blocks can consume the data out of this JSON. And this way you can share the content and reuse it. Now there are also other possibilities, like you can use fragments in EDS to load on the client a full published page in a block if you want. Or now there is an experimental feature that you can use the Adobe Experience Manager content fragments and directly embed HTML out of these fragments with the right HTML structures in your page where you need this. Yeah, so the good thing is when you have to reuse content across the page, you can think about the right strategy to do this. Other important things to mention when working with EDS is metadata, placeholders, and autoblocks. So you will probably quite often use metadata, for example, set on page level to categorize your content or to use it in your blocks to implement variations, like we did it here with the language switch. Then there is a feature called placeholders. This is good if you need multi-language support labels that are not authored in your block. So let's say you have here in this breadcrumb, you have this label. You want to reuse this label in a lot of blocks, but you still want to have it translated. You can add it in a spreadsheet and then use it with placeholders. And the last thing here is the auto blocks concept. So when you have blocks, that should be automatically added on certain pages without having the authors always to put it on the page. Let's say you have hundreds of detail pages and you don't want to always manually add this newsletter banner, you would use the EDS auto blocks feature, and it will automatically add or render a certain block on certain pages, for example, when you have certain metadata on the page. It's also important to mention that you can, of course, still integrate any other external available APIs. So if you want to call secure server-side function or complex logic, you can consume this with EDS client-side. And this way, like what we did here, you can also consume logic from your maybe existing Adobe Experience Manager Classic backend. If you expose a function and it's working independently, you can just call this from EDS and still use it this way. That's something we did here with this subscription. The last thing I want to share is how assets are integrated. So if you can use the default built-in image optimization and built-in asset management. So if you have a document, for example, and you just drag and drop an image in it, you will have some default image optimization. And also, the most important file formats are supported by default with Adobe Edge Delivery Services. But let's say you want to have more control over your images, or you want to reuse it across several components, you would use a DEM. And for complex use cases, we recommend to use a DEM. And we did this also here. So for example, here we needed a high resolution image, and we had this in the DEM, and we could then use it on client side to load the high resolution image here. So you can add additional logic client side with EDS that accesses values from your DEM. And you can use your DEM with EDS natively integrated or through an extension. The last thing I would like to share is how the quality assurance and testing process is working with EDS, or how it worked in this project. And so the first thing is you would start with a definition of your block and add some example content. So, and then already publish this so that all the authors maybe can already play around, or the developers have it. And then the developers, between step 1 and 2, the developers would create the block with this definition. They would create a block, create a code review, a merge request, where they get a code review of the feature they did. And of course, when they do the pull request or the merge request, they will also have this integrated lighthouse check where they can see how they score with the core web vitals. When everything is good and agreed, they can merge it they can leave it, and it can go to QA. And QA can do more content changes on a dedicated testing area on demo pages. And then that's the nice thing what Cornelius already mentioned. They can always see, even if it's not merged already, they can always preview the changes of your feature on a separate branch. As you get, whenever you develop a feature with a branch, you get basically your own environment when you can preview the feature and compare it, for example, to the main branch.
I have one more question for you, Linus. You say, or we learned already, that the content always comes from production. So we have always up-to-date content. But maybe as a QA engineer, I really want to test several content variations, stack several components upon each other, test some crazy content variations. How do I do that when I always mimic production?
Yes, as I said, by default, it's all you work with the production content, but you can, for example, what we did here, you can create a dedicated space or certain pages where you do these tests, or you can, of course, you have this preview environment, so you can just preview the changes in this preview view and not publish it. That's also a possibility. That are the, let's say, easy possibilities.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I would like to give over to Cornelius. He's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not
Thanks.
longer. So for the next few slides, we're going to zoom out a little bit. We've seen the how-to, like how to get started, how to run the dev environment, and how to migrate content. And now we're going to focus on the why and the when. I want to quickly introduce a key architectural concept that you'll hear about. It's called repolas. This is a fundamental shift from traditional IAM, and it's critical for IT to understand. The term repolas actually has two meanings. We've already seen the first one in our demo earlier. Our IAM up command is repolas because we are developing without a heavy local IAM repository or JCR. But the second and more powerful meaning is an architecture. One code base, many sites. In a traditional model, if your organization has 50 similar microsites, maybe for different products or regions, you might need 50 different GitHub repositories to manage them. This is a maintenance nightmare. So the repolas architecture, as shown on the slide, solves this for you. You have one base site that is connected to your one and only GitHub repository. And then you can create new repolas sites that reuse the exact same code base, but point to their own separate content sources, like different SharePoint folders or different Google Drive. You can even mix it up. Imagine you need to add a new privacy banner. Instead of deploying that code 50 times, you will only push it once to the main code repository, and it instantly comes available for all other 50 pages. This massively simplifies code maintenance, ensures 100% brand and functional consistency across all pages, and it's incredibly scalable. And the best thing actually is that it's all managed via configuration and admin API, making it a very lightweight and modern way to manage a large portfolio of sites. So let's quickly talk about what EDS is and what it's not. First and foremost, EDS is a clean break from classic IAM. It's not an upgrade to your existing IAM instance. As I noted on the slide, you cannot and should not try to reuse any of your legacy IAM components. Your Sitely, your HTL, your Sling models, they have no place in EDS. EDS is a completely new, separate, headless presentation layer. This is a net new front-end project. That leads directly to the second point. As you correctly identified, EDS is architected as a headless presentation layer. It's the so-called edge. It's not a back-end application server. Complex, stateful business logic, think about a shopping cart, a price calculation engine, or complex user authentication. That logic must be built outside of EDS. It should live in an external microservice or APIs, which EDS is extremely good to consume at. The next point is a more specific technical consideration. The EDS block-based system is built on a composition model. You build small, simple, independent blocks and compose them to create rich pages. It does not have a deep multi-level inheritance model like you might be used to use in a classic IAM or other object-oriented systems. It's basically a flatter, simpler, and more web-native approach. And finally, this isn't really a limitation at all, but it's the most critical consideration for project planning and resourcing. An EDS project is a pure front-end project. The primary development work is in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The main skill set you need is a strong front-end team and not a team of classic IAM Java developers. Your Java experts will be building the APIs that EDS can consume, but usually not working on the EDS project itself. So to summarize, it's a clean break, it's a headless front end, and it requires a front-end team. Knowing this from day one is the key to scoping and staffing your project correctly.
I would like to jump in here. And ask you something. So we know that headless and composable CMS or DXP are clearly in a trend, but we also learned that EDS is not really a headless CMS. So when or why would you choose a headless CMS such as Contentful or Strapi or whatever? And when would you choose EDS, or why is EDS the more interesting choice?
Yeah, okay. So I try to focus on why I would choose EDS here. Basically, when you choose to go with EDS, you don't have to, or you can skip the step of setting up the base structure to run your application. So these frameworks bring a lot of tools and features, but usually you have to set up the routing, you have to set up the content integration yourself. So the one part is the front end, the headless thing, but the other part is also the CMS. So you have to have both. And for EDS, you have all out of the box from the get-go.
Okay, that sounds good. I want to further understand a bit about the maturity of EDS. We know it's a rather new product. Now let's make an example. I want to build an e-commerce store. Can I also do that with EDS, or would you say EDS is not ready yet for that? Or will it ever be ready?
Yeah, so right now, so the short answer would be I would do it today. I would not build my e-commerce platform on EDS today, because EDS is made for content-driven websites, as we just showed earlier. But that doesn't mean that this answer is the same, or the answer will be the same in 6 or 12 months, because Adobe is heavily investing in EDS, in the environments, and so probably you will be able to do something that is very similar, or you even create an online store in EDS in the near or far future.
Okay, sounds promising. Thank you.
Okay, so we've covered a tremendous amount of technical ground up to now. We've seen that EDS is a high-performance front-end first system. We've seen what it is not. It's not a traditional backend. We've seen how it scales with wraperless architecture. This final slide is the chapter that brings it all together. This is our checklist based on our experience for when EDS is the perfect choice for your project. So we can quickly go through the list. You work in an agile environment. Your website is mainly content-driven. Custom layout and or user experience is a critical factor. What you see is what you get, or document-based authoring is preferred. Good website performance is very important. And development with your own or new developers should easily be possible. So if you find yourself checking some or many of those boxes, then Edge Delivery Service is almost certainly the right architectural fit for you right now. Back to you, Kirby.
Thank you. Amazing, guys. Now, before we move to QA, I want to state again, please send us your questions through the chat. We already received a couple of them. We will go into them in a second. I already mentioned it in the beginning. Today was a rather technical part, but we also covered in the webinar before that there is also, of course, more the marketing or the content side of EDS. So make sure to check out the YouTube video that is still available. We are posting it into the chat right now, so make sure to check it out and learn more about the marketing side. I also mentioned at the beginning that this webinar is part of our series DXP Unlocked. There's one more event coming up on December 11th, and we will be talking about personalization and A/B testing and everything that comes after we publish content. But now I would say we go into the questions, and I already have a first question for you, Linus. We mentioned at the beginning that with EDS, we can save up to 30%. can you elaborate again on where these 30% are coming from?
Yes. Yes. So with EDS, when you develop components to present content, you basically need no backend development. So you don't need this backend integration. I think this is where you save quite a lot of time. So for simpler components, or when you have a lot just with styles to present stuff, there is no backend development needed and no integration. Of course, you can still integrate the backend if you have a clear interface. And then also you have this boilerplate, which is extremely fast and makes development extremely fast to start, and you have a pretty fast go live. I think these are the main points where you save the time.
Okay. And what happens to all these AM backend developers? I mean, aren't they needed anymore in the future on AM?
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, you can still use the AM backend. So if you have EDS, you have the AM as a cloud service license, you automatically still have also the backend, and you can still use the backend or any other service basically in the EDS and consume it on the client side. So this is maybe good. So if you want to have secure server-side functions, or if you have complex logic, need to do a lot of work with data or calculations, you can still have your backend developers preparing this so that this works in isolation, and then you can consume this in the front end EDS blocks or wherever you need it there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. One more question to you. When I decide to go for EDS, does that mean I have to launch like a huge migration project and migrate all my sites, or can I do this also in an iterative approach?
Yes, definitely. So you don't have to migrate all at once. As mentioned previously, I mean, you cannot really use the classical AM components, but you can definitely migrate step by step. So you can, if you have multiple pages, you can migrate only the first page. But even if you have a big page, you can migrate it step by step. So there is an example out there. I think it's Qantas Airline, where they only just migrated the homepage to EDS. That's definitely possible. So you can go with a step-by-step approach. Yes, and also you can make use of the tools from Adobe that helps you with the migration of the pages.
Wonderful. Another question that I have here, more for Cornelius. We learned at the beginning that performance is crucial for SEO, for GEO, and EDS obviously does very well there. But still, the server, we learned that the server sends out a very simple HTML and the rest of the page is rendered client side. Now, isn't that a problem for Google or any other crawlers from any LLMs to kind of properly make sense of the page if we don't have a full HTML?
Yeah, so I think we need to differentiate here a bit. So first, Google nowadays is fully able to see the page, like the crawler is able to see the page like the user would see it, and then obviously it does make sense of the content. So it renders the page, it executes JavaScript and so on and so forth. So for Google, this is absolutely no problem for quite some time now. So in the early beginnings, I guess this was a bit of a problem, but nowadays it's not, because Google knows and is also heavily using JavaScript. So yeah. The second part is for LLMs. So for LLMs, I think the layout is not that important. What is more important that the LLMs can read the content. So let's say article detail pages, it's important that they can see 100% of the content that is there. So no content coming from anywhere that is important for you. And LLMs can actually do that. So the HTML structure in EDS is simple, but the content is fully visible to LLMs. And the second part, and that's I think the most important part, or the other half of the coin, the backside of the coin, is as your pages are extremely quick, LLMs will probably prioritize your pages as well, because speed for them is essential.
Very good. Thank you. I have another question for you, Linus. I'll just read it from the chat. Since EDS needs vanilla JavaScript and CSS for decorating the blocks, does it mean that heavy or interactive components like a carousel or a sliding banner, that for these components, you can't use any plugins? Because if you program everything vanilla, it could take quite some time.
Yes, no, I mean, you can definitely still integrate these libraries. It's completely possible. If it's JavaScript, you don't even need anything else. You can just integrate it, but it's just a question if you want to do it or not. If you think it saves you a lot of effort, and if you have still this good performance score when you integrate this library, it's a good approach, I think. But if it's on the long run, or if it's bad for the performance, maybe, or if it's pretty simple, it's also good to do it with vanilla JavaScript. So you can do both.
Very good. Thank you. Another question, Cornelius, too. It's a bit more generic, but can you share some more details how you integrate external APIs with EDS?
Yeah, sure. So as all the rendering basically happens client side, we can utilize the standard JavaScript Fetch API, for example, to connect to whatever external APIs there are. You have to make sure that the whole authentication, for example, is handled correctly on your end, in the front end, but there's basically no limits. You can just use it from the front end, from the client code, from inside JavaScript, fetch the data that you need, and then just display it.
Very good. Thank you. We already have a follow-up for our answer with the vanilla. Let's read it quickly. Typically, we use SIT, UIT, AEM environments for SIT. I'm not 100% sure what the abbreviation means. And for UIT testing, how does this work in EDS?
It's probably standard integration testing or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So like we showed earlier, for each change, there is a dedicated branch, and this is where you basically do the testing. So QA members test on that branch to see if the integration that you did there, or the feature change, works as expected. On top of that, there's like the intermediate layer where you can use the preview environment to publish content variations that should not necessarily go to production. So you can publish to preview and test that preview data content with a feature branch.
Can you also run the automated integration tests there?
The automated integration tests. Well, there's like what you can do is you can utilize GitHub's actions to run whenever you do a commit, for example. This is just like Linus talked about earlier, where the Lighthouse score is automatically calculated and some tests are run. So basically what GitHub has defines the limit.
Perfect. I would say our time is up. Thank you, everybody, for dialing in, for joining our EDS webinar. If you have any questions or want to follow up, please reach out to us, and we are happy to help or discuss any points further. Cheers, and have a good evening or day. Bye-bye.